Hey everybody, Texas Trucker here, Lance at Performance Shop along Mopars.com. Thursday night, really late. We actually set a record today for the latest 100-degree day in the year. Trying to stay cool, but also have to get something done, and we're going to try to fly through this one. As you can see, this is a DRPD tool haul. If you haven't picked up on it, oftentimes when you order from DRPD, and you dump out those sweet freebie stickers, you get a rough idea of what you got going. This is coming out great because, first of all, we've got the sort of desert tan, dirt-colored DRPD logo, kind of more of the rare side, and then some of you instantly recognize that we've got Koken. So, that's it. That's all we've got, nothing else. And like I said, gonna try to go fast. As always, I've got everything linked for you. I don't make a jack off of that. You could go buy it up a million times over. It's solely there for your convenience. We're gonna get started with a repeat offender, which is why we're making this video. It's not something I enjoy well, but it's something that we've got to do. And fittingly, we had a call I had to take right as we start up. So the good news is I read the wrong part number anyway. So we'll just mulligan this one. And what we've got is Koken's RS. What does that mean? Railed set. You're 100% correct there. 3405. I see why I crossed these. They are very close. 3405M/12. Some of you thinking, I think I know what that is, kind of. Rough idea. The M is for metric, right? That's correct. And the /12, of course, is the total pieces in the set. This one sets you back very... Think again, this is 12-piece socket set. Sets you back $61.25. I should also tell you, I bought all this on the Labor Day sale, so we saved an additional 15%, if I remember correctly. But what we've got is right here. Love these little bags. They put them in there. Spring steel rails are actually pretty good. I always thought the Proto ones were. They were back in the day, and I've had maybe 2 that are solid, and the rest have been junk. I don't know what went wrong there, but this is what we have. And you're like, well, what exactly is this? It's like socket set, maybe 3/8, assuming there's 12 pieces. Show that label to me. Well, there you go. And now you can see a profile of the sockets. And if you're thinking like, hey, those look like 12-point metric, that's exactly what it is. If you can see the label there, 8 with no skips all the way through 19, 12-point. You're probably thinking like, what are you doing with this, and why is it important? Don't you have these? You said repeat offender, and that's 100% correct. These are going to work, and I wish I would have had them there yesterday. Is basically why they're going now. Been super busy, don't get a ton of free time, and I hadn't gotten to introduce this stuff since it's been, I guess I hadn't been here too long. You know, came in I think around the 7th or something, so 10, 12 days, something like that. But yeah, yesterday, all I have for metric sockets in my roll cart is a little Philo set. Some of you may remember it's like the yellow, super cool L-box, flip-up lid. It's SAE and metric, which is kind of rare. And the main reason I took that to work was for the metric sockets. And I was having to service the old Ford, and the negative cable just, I don't know what Ford does. You got your terminal at the battery, right, and they run the solenoid right there. I guess it's convenient. You can jump it, but negative cable, you run down off the battery, and then it runs through. It's melted. It's some sort of a emissions line or something. I don't know, some junk I don't deal with in old cars. It runs down to the K-member, and they strip the wire. This is a factory thing. Like, they just totally strip it. They don't just add a lug or run it through a cable tie or some sort of a holster to keep it there. They strip the cable, and they put a lug on it, kind of fold it over, and it shoots down to the K-member. And then it runs back. And when I had to get underneath that thing yesterday, I thought that it would bolt it straight to the starter. And so you're down there. It sits really low. This is one of the older trucks. And I got underneath that thing, tried to take it off, finally got it free, was super happy, and started trying to tug the cable forward. And it wasn't moving. I'm like, what's the deal? Well, they don't run it straight to the starter. They just run it to some common ground lug on like a boss on the side of the things Ford does. And this is all backwards to me as well. You know, the truck is going this way, right? Like we're pulling forward. You'd be sitting here driving. You got your passenger here. So I pull it out. I've got it up on ramps. And I tell you what, everything I do, the starter's on the driver's side. And where's the starter on a Ford? It's over here. So you've got all that going weird, which you're not used to, and then just nothing is fluid to me. Right? Like you're going from point A to B, but you make stops at Y and Z on it. I don't know. It's the Chrysler in me, the common sense in me. It is what it is, man. But what I have in terms of metric sockets is legitimately the little quarter drive Philo set, which performs admirably. And the newer Ford, the battery dies all the time, and so I think it's like a 7 or an 8 and a 10, maybe 2 or 3, I can't remember. I think 10s may be for the cables, and then I think one of the hold downs is an 8 and the other's a 6. Something along those lines. I don't care. I deal with it only when I have to. And that's it. That's all I have for metric. So with that little set, the really cool looking ratchet, not the greatest thing in the world. The extension comes in very handy for said hold downs. And then the little sockets, which I don't believe are German made. They're probably Taiwanese. Not a big deal. But what is a big deal is I can't put a lot of leverage through that. I mean, we're talking like a little ratchet like that, right? My work Koken ratchet is this one right here. It's not this one. Obviously, this is the home one, but one just like it is at work. It's just got a floppier head because I run these big 15, 16 sockets on it all the time. But it would have been really nice to have this. It would have been really nice to have my little Hazette 3/8 in there. It would have been nice to have a breaker bar in there. But I'm limited to quarter, and I'm limited to those little sockets that also... People fight this all the time. You hear me. I say these things because I mean them. I live by them. 6-point versus 12-point. Where I was, what I was doing, coming through some little access hole down here. Okay, like that my hand doesn't, like, my hand can't just go through and then have free reign. It's like, when I say I'm going through the access hole, my hand is this much. Like, I have 2 fingers and maybe a thumb if I twist it right and cut into my wrist, okay? So I'm going through there, trying to then come up on top of the starter to take that cable off, and then that stud is like a million miles up this way. So I'm like dealing with an index finger and a traffic finger, and then that tiny little ratchet, and you're coming in at an angle, and I can't really get the ratchet straight to get good leverage on it. It's just a nightmare, If I had a lift, sure, it'd probably be fine. If you did this stuff all the time with the old thing, you'd probably know right what to do. It's just a pain in the butt. And then on top of everything, I'm going to use metric sockets. But a 12-point socket would have been really nice because I'm having to sit there. I have my little Mac. Ultimately, I was having to resort to using it, the 9-inch Mac flex head. And that head's gotten pretty wobbly. But I'm in there, and like I'm trying to get the ratchet through that access point so I can get good leverage on it and pull it back towards me. And the biggest issue I've got is the 6-point socket. I'm unable to hook on without the ratchet flopping back too far. So ultimately, I'm like sticking the socket on, happy with that, and then I'm trying to get the ratchet in there, but I can't turn it because it's tiny quarter drive. And I said, man, if I just would have had a chance. I've got these things. They're literally, ordered them on Labor Day. They came in the 7th. This is the 19th, right? I'll just assume that focused. The 19th, so they've been here 12 days. I just hadn't had time to get them here. I'm not going to deal with that again. I want these freaking 12-point 3/8 drive metric sockets in the work roll cart so I can utilize this, or maybe even better yet, just the fixed Hazette's a little shorter. I think it might work well there. The good news is we got the cable on. Everything cranks great, but she doesn't start, and that doesn't solve the problem. Now the cable, totally diagnosed that one right. We had no juice at all, and that thing was just nasty. I mean, I'm talking everything is dry rotting, and then you just, by splitting it on the K-member of all places, and this truly is factory. If you buy like the good aftermarket cable, like the repop you can get for those things, the good one is done just like the factory did, and that's literally what they did. It just introduces moisture into, I don't understand it. That is, no, I go from A to B. It's stripped here and it's insulated and crimped, usually hammered down really good. Same thing on this end, and there is nothing. When I do battery cables, there is nothing in the middle. There's no splice, there's no junction, there's no nothing. If I do anything, like if you had to go through a firewall because you're running into the trunk or something for weight transfer, if I didn't want to drill a straight hole and go through a grommet for some reason, I'm running a distribution block right there on the firewall. And we're going, point A to point B, right? You got your distribution block, your lug on both sides, basically. And then C to D, which is the terminal of the battery now located in the trunk. Ford does things differently. And, yeah. So... I get to now figure all that out, but by gosh, these are going to be there because I bought them specifically for the work cart, for specifically weird stuff I have to do like that. And as I've said, we're like 95% SAE. That's what I'm set up for. It's just freak stuff, like mainly batteries on like modern stuff that I have to bust out the metrics. So realistically, I probably should have bought a standalone 7 just in case. I can't remember. I kind of want to say it is a 7. I feel like the newer one, I think it's a 2016. I feel like it might have the 3 sizes. There's like an extra piece. There's like a hold down, and then Ford does that weird wedge thing, that seems pointless. And then of course the cables themselves. But the older one, 89, I think it just has the wedge. Pretty sure. Strange, again, coming from Chrysler stuff, little J-hooks. Anyway, this is what's here, and there's not enough good things I can say. And then practicing what I preach, I always tell you, man, it's really hard to find a better value in sockets than Proto or Koken. I'm very confident in both. I will not lie, I have way more experience with Proto, and that's just because I've been familiar with them and used them at work for years and years. I kind of know how well they last and hold up. Same thing with Wright. The Wrights are in fewer volume than the Protos at work. But the Koken stuff, why didn't I go Proto and match everything? I don't know. I like to spice it up. So the Koken 3/8 is there. It made sense to pair this with the 3/8. I hope I don't need semi-deep. I hope I don't need deep. I'll probably get deep at some point just because it would bother me with socket organizers. Although I could do 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2. I've seriously considered that. That sounds crazy to some of you. Think what you do. Some of you don't ever use SAE. It's like once in a blue moon and it makes a really bad day. You might literally do that. You might have like your 1/4, your 3/8, and your 1/2, and you win as cheap as you possibly could because you just don't use it. So that's it. Proto's roughly in this ballpark price-wise. Both very comprehensive sets. Again, 8 to 19, no skips from Koken here. I feel like that's pretty solid, especially for 3/8, especially considering I can come in here and add the 7 if I want to. So that's what we did. That's what we're going to call good on that front. Now, some of you are like, man, this is a sad video. Thought there'd be some more stuff, some cool stuff. It's just a repeat offender, buddy. Well, something I try to do is always tell you why. I wish I didn't have to buy these and have metric sockets in the work cart. I'd be a lot happier, right? I wish Fords didn't always have batteries die that required me to have this stuff. But they do, and so it's going there. And I think this is a fantastic price. Again, do the math. $60 almost, 61-ish. We'll just call it 60 to make this simple. 12 sockets, that's $5 per socket. And again, we're going all the way up to 19, no skips. I'll call that good. Koken, again, I've used it for years now, but not, when I say years with Proto, okay, I mean like back to the 90s. With this, like what, 5-6 years maybe? And given how sparingly these will, now granted, we could get some cool new machines or something that could change rapidly, but with what I'm doing now, not very often. But I feel very confident in these. I think they're a great price. And it's kind of cool just to have the Koken and Proto, hybrid there working for me. I do the same thing here. And I'm comfortable and familiar with them. And going back to work now, I might, like I said, I might just go Koken on the metric stuff. I'd love to do German. And I seriously could with the metric stuff. The SAE offerings in German sockets kind of get funky. You're like, I'm going to do all 12, and you can't. They don't make them. And you're like, I'm going to do 6-point, and they do some strange things. Koken is a little bit more complete of a catalog on the SAE front. But metric, it really could be, I guess, whatever my heart desires. It's just these are a stupid good deal. Okay, so that's why I have Proto and not Mac. That's why we have Proto and not Snap-on. I know they work, they're good, and they're just the best value. I'd love to go all right, but the Protos are just the better bang for the buck. So Koken, same thing. Like I told you, Koken and Proto, very, very hard to go wrong, especially when you consider the price point. But I'm not going to leave you hanging like that. Oh, no, no. It is now time to turn around and grab this, which this is something I always figured, I'd buy it. I was just kind of waiting, and there was always something else cooler or more interesting to me. Because again, here even at the house, outside of late model stuff, I prefer to live in the past. I like the 60s and 70s. I'd love to get a forward look Mopar, right? Like particularly a Lancer. That would definitely be all SAE. But 60s and 70s, man, that's where I'm happy, right? Slant 6, 318, 340, 360, 383, 400, 440. Maybe someday I'll have like a legit Gen 2 Hemi, but that's my happy place, right? And that said, though, I do like the late model stuff, and unfortunately, the late model stuff is not SAE, it is metric. The truck, true hybrid there. That's like a mix mash of old and new. But the LX, the LC stuff, the Chargers, the Challengers, it's all metric. So I kind of have to adapt to survive, And what I've got in my hand is part number RS. Looking back, that's a railed set. 3450, again, that is one digit switched between what we just read off, which is why I butchered it the first time, which doesn't matter because a phone call came in. M, that tells you metric, /10. If this is /12 for 12 pieces, and you're thinking, does that mean it's a 10-piece set? It does, but wait, there's more. It's actually going to be a 12-piece set. Price point on this particular item, this is much more spendy than that, and there's a good reason for it. You're thinking like, are they super stubby? Are they Zeals? Well, what's the catch? Semi-deep, you must have gone semi. You just went ahead and bought deep, right? No. These, if you will eventually be able to focus in on that, might kind of tip you off if you're familiar with Koken's product line. Either buy the sockets you might see, or buy the picture on the tag. That tag actually tells you. You're thinking like, okay, 10 through 9. No, wait, 10 through 22. Wow, what a set. Well, there are skips. This is a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19, 21, 22. Those are your Powerball numbers for the night, right? Problem is, we skipped 16, we skipped 18. I'm not really as concerned about the 20, but 16 and 18, those kind of see some use from time to time. So, we went out, and we got the brown bag special, DRPD. What is stuck to that? So many spiders. I killed a massive tarantula last night when I took the trash out. 3450M-16 and -18. So throw those down. We made a 12-piece set. And you're like, well, I don't know what the picture meant. Tell me. Well, I'll show you. Now, looking at the socket out of the bag, you probably have a slightly better idea, right? Hopefully. All the Koken aficionados or fans out there. What's different about these? You think like, okay, well, smaller set, bigger size. You're missing the 8 and the 9. You go to 22 here. These are 6-point versus 12. That's correct. 6-point versus 12. Something else, though. And what is it? Take a good look right there. And take a good look over here. Notice anything? You're like, what's that band? Well, that's a steel spring, and it holds. That's right. You figured it out, didn't you? These are nut grips. And these are not going to work. These are staying here. But this is, they kind of have two sets, I believe, like railed sets. I want to say they have basically this 8 through 19, granted 6-point. And then they've got this one. And my thoughts were, I think this one was actually like, I did the math. Anytime I buy stuff, I invest that extra like 10 minutes to make sure I'm coming out as light on the wallet as possible, even with a 15% off sale. And I think this turned out to be the better deal. So 10 through 22, and I've got a 16 and an 18 that we're going to plug in. You're thinking like, man, but just look at that Ford deal. Wouldn't that 8 be nice when you're going way down, and if you drop that stupid little bolt, you're going to lose it in the engine bay or something and have to go fishing for it underneath the trucks? That's very true, but years back, we picked up the quarter drive metric. Not nearly comprehensive, but it's the very small sizes. I think it actually goes up through 14, which is super nice. I remember bragging about that. 14's a big deal to me because, aside from having to run into it a lot, I can basically interchange that with 9/16, and that's a big deal. So this set, though, kind of gives me a bigger size range, and then pairing it with the quarters, I kind of cover from wherever that thing started up to 22, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, financially, it made more sense. If you are not familiar with Koken's nut grips at this point in time, shame on you. You haven't been watching all the videos. And, we will forgive you, and we will make a quick education attempt. So where this, we'll just stick with 14s since we're talking about them, right? Beautiful little socket, right? Kind of the same profile height-wise. Got the Koken stamping, we've got the part number, we've got the size on the front of Koken. Same thing here, just starting with the size, Koken, part number. This is super nice in the event that something goes wrong or you shatter or fracture a sidewall, something like that. 12-point, 6-point. But where this is just a traditional 12-point, which will not round things up. The misconceptions people have. I tell you, 12-point to me is far more versatile. It'll hold 12-point sockets. Yes, those exist. It'll hold 6-point sockets. It gives you twice as many chances of landing on it, which would be really nice when you're on your back on rough concrete, trying to fit your hand through a hole that wasn't designed to fit a hand that size. And of course, you've got the nut grip. So this will also hold square stock, big thing, particularly if you do any machining or something. So multitudes of fasteners fit in that the 6-point can't do. What makes this special, though, is the spring. And what the spring does is hold a little ball. You can see one here right below the index finger. You can see one on the opposite opposing flat. What that's going to do, luckily I've got a 3/8 bolt here. And you're like, this is all metric, you buffoon. Well, let's see if we get lucky. And that's a very tight fit. Again, Koken's tolerance is super, super nice. Look at this. You're thinking like, well, okay, well, what's the big deal? That. This isn't necessarily a huge deal. I'm just inches above this work mat, right? But now pretend that this is that stupid little bolt that holds that wedge down on a battery, right? And you're coming in with a Philo. It does have a nice extension driver in it, but you've got that and your long extension and maybe a wobble, and then I'm trying to get that, and guess what? Click! It just falls off, and it rolls in that little plastic crack that goes right underneath the battery, and you're like, gotta be kidding me. There's no room on this side to come in with like even bent nose pliers or anything, so you gotta lift the battery up and go fishing. This would prevent that. It's a nut grip, as you can see here. We're flinging that thing around, nothing's happening. That's by design. It's not magnetic, which is also a big deal because, it's a perfect example, this is stainless. So your magnet depends on the quality of the stainless and the strength of the magnet, but this will work beautifully with this. If we come in here, this is going to hold really well too. Again, super tight tolerances with the Koken, but watch this. I go upside down and she comes out. Why? It's a 12-point socket. This is designed to prevent that. Whether this is overhead or you get in like a really funky situation, cannot tell you how much crud fell on my face yesterday. But, particularly from going through holes that are not designed for my hand. But it can be something as simple as you're under the dash, you're under a truck in this case, and you're going up and you're trying to fish this into a boss on the side of the block, and guess what? If I don't have the nut grip here, this falls out. Usually, it's like landing somewhere in the midsection, but what if I like scooted myself out a little farther, see if I could get a different perspective and vantage point on it instead of coming from behind it, right? Maybe I like am directly underneath and have a sweet line of sight and can somehow contort my hand up in there. Well, then this is going to come down in my face. That makes this little socket really, really nice to have. Now, another situation, totally opposite. If this falls out like it just did from the 12-point socket, it's not going to hit me. I don't care. I don't have to worry about bodily harm. However, where is this falling? Okay, let's put this now in a panel. You've packed full of components because it's an undersized case because people are cheap. All right, so we're packing as much as we can in as small of a footprint as possible. You're gonna have to go fishing. Not a big deal, but you know, you're gonna wind up cutting your hand, little scrapes and bruises you shouldn't have to endure with, especially if you had a nut grip socket that would keep this in place. You know how it is. You come in and you try to start the threads and it wobbles a little and wonk. There goes your fastener. Grab your magnet, get your pliers, turn the panel over, whatever. Same thing, maybe it's a sub box. You just ran new wires, or you updated it, put LEDs in on the lid. You know, hopefully you did it well where people don't see the LEDs, they only see the lights. Pet peeve of mine. But suppose the fastener drops down. What are you going to do? Gotta go fishing. Threads, you were right there in the hole, but man, you turned it and it was kind of stripped, you know, Best Buy, whoever did it originally, some other shop. You know, didn't exactly do things great. Fastener, you got to go fish the thing out, right? With a nut grip, even though it doesn't catch, you just simply back out, come in, reposition, maybe come in and get a wobble and get her started. Maybe you're like, okay, hey, that didn't work well. Let me try to get it by hand, see if I can feel this out. You do, boom. You can put this on, doesn't have to be a ratchet. It could totally be on your spinner handle, something like that. So, case in point, though, we're going to pop this sucker on the old Koken. This is what we would be working with. And again, maybe you're like me. Maybe you prefer to live in the 60s and 70s. Maybe you're not super cool. You're not into Mopars. Maybe you're into Mustangs. You have a 69 Camaro Pro Street car. Picture this in SA iterations, which Koken makes, and think of something you've had to do, whether it's an intake manifold bolt, whether it's some crazy like exhaust hanger, you know, you got V-bands set up, and problem is your tailpipe hanger is a really trick billet bracket, but man, that's a pain to get to. Wouldn't it be nice if your fastener was just held in place? Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to take tape or fold up paper, you know, and constantly deal with that, and you could just have a socket designed to do that job? That's what the nut grips are. That's why they're attractive, that's why they're appealing, and that's why I finally cracked and bought some. So the SAE stuff, again, that was a big deal to me, and again, that's relatively new. The metric stuff, that's where Koken cuts their teeth. You gotta remember it's a Japanese company, and we finally joined the modern times, and most of you, and we now have the metric nut grips. Depending on what you do, I would personally say the 3/8 set would be the most versatile. Again, depending what you do, it could very well be the quarter. Maybe the smaller profile is good for you. But just in terms of bang for the buck and the size range, this is a sweet setup. Again, I did the math. I suggest you always do that because it could change. But for me, going from 10 to 22, no skips, and adding the 16 and the 18, that was the ticket. Similarly, as I mentioned, if I want to add an 8, we can do that. If you need a 9 for some reason, you can do that. Fill it out to your heart's content. But as mentioned, this video is kind of getting expedited. I've got a poor couple of tools from DRPD that have been waiting a long time. Nothing I have to have, nothing I need to take to work. That's why they wind up getting pushed farther and farther back. But this right here is very important all of a sudden, and again, I cannot tell you how badly I wished I would have had it yesterday. So, these little guys here, we're going to get those populated, probably pair them with the quarter drives, and go to town on that front. And this is the whole reason I came out here, and I'm standing in a super hot shop with the door down because of mosquitoes and tarantulas and stuff, and we're taking that to work. So, that's what I got for you. Again, nothing too crazy, sort of repeats, but all this time, all this Koken stuff, I literally, you can go back and verify, Koken, DRPD, whatever it may be, never had the 3/8 metric nut grips. So we corrected that. All is right in the world, slightly better. Maybe you'll sleep a little better at night knowing that we've corrected this egregious glaring weakness in the toolbox arsenal. But like I said, I do think these will come in handy. This is not something, I've got these here. I've got 6 points here. I'm going to use those all the time. These I try truly. It's super cool to have them and use them, but I really do try to just use them like when they're needed or beneficial. Reason for that, they will wear out. I don't know how long. I've never had it happen to me. But if you're just to crank these on and throw them on your impact and drive them with everything, even when it's not necessarily needed, you just expedite that. So to me, it's kind of a specialty socket, right? And that's the way I try to treat it. If you're trying to ball on a budget and you got to have these, you think, man, that would be so handy for boom, 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 boom. Pull the trigger. If you have to use them all the time, do it. Just be aware if you can get to the point where you can just boom. Crack that $60 out for the 12 point or, similar 6-point set, and then keep these as like a specialty. That's the way I would advise, because ultimately you'll save yourself a little hassle and time in the long run. But if you've never used them, I recommend them. Obviously, you can buy them individually. So if you use a 10 and a 13 and nothing else, or those are the only two sizes you can think of with what you do that benefits you, get them. Go that route. Save the money. Don't get the set. Then if you try them and you love them and you're like, man, I really should buy that set just in case, then do that. You don't have to jump in with a $100 set. You can get to be fair, I don't think we covered the price on those. The 16 is $10.75. The 18 is $11.10. So in terms of a 10 and a 13, if I had to guess, I would say they're probably around $10. And like I said, if the 10 millimeter, it's what you're always like, man, that thing falls out all the time. This paper thing is wearing thin. Spend the $10, get one, try it. If you love it, do that. If you're like, man, this is really sweet, but I do not need all those, but a 13 and an 8 would be nice, add those. Start small, do what works best for you, but these are fantastic to have if you can swing it. On that note, I just timed it out since we were about to, I knew I wouldn't finish the outro there in 10 seconds, but yeah, kind of losing my voice in the sultry shop out here. I've also got to go to work early, go figure. But I do hope you enjoyed. Maybe you learned a little something. I know for some of you it's just a reminder of how fantastic these are. For others of you, hopefully, if you were unaware of these, you now know. And again, highly, highly recommended. I do strongly advocate, though, like, if you can, kind of keep these for like specialty stuff, right? If you sort of get like super, super fancy, like holding ring, long hex keys, maybe don't use them every time, but definitely use them when they're needed or a benefit, and you're just gonna, again, extend the life of the tool. So with that said, going to work, going to the US General, and this is going to be really nice to have had yesterday, like I said. So the good news is, or the bad news, sort of semi-bittersweet, truck still doesn't start, so I got to figure something out, right? So boom, these are going to be there. I'll have them. I don't have to rely on the quarter drive Philo set. Great little set. It's been good to me. It's done a lot more than it should have been tasked with. But, it'll be nice to have the available arsenal of 3/8 ratchets I have, which is far more significant than quarter drive. So, and these will be now the de facto go-to metric stuff at work for me. So they should see most of the action. Granted, that's minimalistic action, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. LoneStarMopars.com is the website. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. If you have not subscribed, I encourage you to do so. Again, this is, I guess, a good time for me to plug this. I've had Snap-on videos. I told you we're going to do Mac at 7,500, Matco at 5K, Snap-on at 10K. As you might know, I'm usually well ahead. Like, I record videos right now that you'll probably see like in the dead of winter, and you're like, 100 degrees, where's he at? Sometimes in the summer, you hear me talking about the blizzard because it was recorded 6 months ago. Yeah, there is a litany of Snap-on videos I'm just waiting to release, and I'm a man of my word. I said 10K, we'll do 10K. Unless I get to the point where I like run out of stuff. The sad thing is, a lot of videos I've recorded had those Snap-ons in them, and I kind of try not to release those either to spoil the Snap-on. But yeah, crazy stuff. Try to keep things entertaining, but if you haven't subscribed, if you know anyone that would like the channel, again, I'm not asking you for money. I'm just asking you to help me be able to release those freaking videos that have been sitting there for like over a year. I would greatly be appreciative. But that said, the good news is we don't have restrictions, self-imposed restrictions on DRPD and Koken, so we're going to continue to crank these suckers out, and we'll take it from there. But I do want your input on this. If you've used these, what are you doing with them? If you're at work, are you like me with metric? Is it just, yeah, here's my SAE section over here? You know, like 3 times a year I have to bust that out. Feel free to leave your comments there. How would you approach that? Like, would you just, what did you do? If you're all metric, but every once in a while that, you know, 1950s machine goes down, you're like, oh, geez, I need, you know, a 7/16 and a 13/16, or whatever it might be. You know, did you cheap out and go all shallow? Did you like try to like, hey, you know, I'm gonna get this semi-deep stuff. It's a nice compromise, and I don't have to buy shallow and deep. What did you do? What would you do if you could do it differently? Because again, I would personally love to have done semi. I think that would just be stupid cool. That's also really expensive, unfortunately. And, you know, would I like to have semi-deep Koken sockets at work? Sure, but in metric, I'm just not going to use them often, so I'd rather have money to throw in a jar and hopefully have a Viper someday. So we're going to go cheap and just get shallows and pair them with our extensions. If I need a deep socket, how deep do I want it? I have plenty of extensions, so that's my strategy. It may come back to bite me, who knows, but it's what I'm doing. And yeah, if you do subscribe and the channel takes off, like I'm very predictable. I enjoy cars and tools, so if you want me to have more tools, there you go. If you want me to get a crazy land speed, you know, twin turbo Viper, well, that's the pipe dream off in the distant future. So very predictable, cars and tools. So with that said, though, I better get inside. I hope you enjoyed. Again, learned a little something. Snap on at 10K. The videos are there. They're just waiting. So if you're already subscribed, maybe spread the word on the channel. Again, we're kind of a niche channel. Do our own thing, our own little formats and everything. But enough of you like it for me to not change, become something I'm not. So we'll just roll with it. But yeah. LoneStarMopars.com, again, is the website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz, at Lone Star Mopars. New videos every Wednesday and Saturday, 9 a.m. Texas time. If you jump your Charger across the creek, you drop off some Koken 3/8 metric nut grip sockets to your buddy. YouTube just might notify you about those videos. With that said, thanks so much for watching, and I do hope I catch you back here for more action from the shop.